This is J. Krishnamurti's fifth public talk in New Delhi, 1970.
I think we were going to talk over together what is meditation. What is the meaning of it, the significance of it, what it does and doesn't do. We're going to investigate, examine, and find out for ourselves what it is. One thing is fairly obvious, which is we must totally change the way we are living. There must be deep, radical revolution in our lives. That is quite obvious. A revolution, not merely superficial, economic or social, or upset the establishment and in its place put a new establishment. But we are concerned, if we are at all serious in this matter, how can the human mind, which is so conditioned, how can such a mind undergo a radical transformation? How can it live, act, and function at a totally different dimension? Because what we have been doing for many, many centuries, centuries upon centuries, is to function within a very limited part of our brain, using the very structure of the brain along a particular channel. And again, this is fairly obvious. And can there be a mutation in the very brain cells themselves? That's one problem. And I think that's the major problem. Because we are responding to every challenge with the old brain. The old brain, which is traditional, habitual, mechanical, which has been conditioned, for millennia. And when there is any kind of challenge, as life is a constant challenge, we are responding with the old brain, with the old mechanical, traditional, egotistic, self-centered response, which again is very obvious. And when we are asking the question, where are those brain cells themselves can undergo a radical transformation, a mutation, we have to inquire. The quality of a mind that can perceive without any kind of effort, without any suppression, imitation, conformity, wiping away all the traditional morality, which is no morality at all, and find out a way of living that is totally different. And perhaps meditation is, or rather, point out how this radical transformation can be brought about. Now, as we said, we are sharing the problem together. There is no authority to tell you what to do. No new system of meditation. And when you have a system of meditation, it is no longer a meditation. It's just a mechanical repetition. And that is utterly futile and has no meaning whatsoever. Now most people, especially in Asia, including this country, have concept of what meditation is. They have been told how to meditate, what to do, and all the rest of it. You see, the speaker has not read any books about all this, has no system. He has to find it out for himself. He had to wipe away everything that he had been told. You're following all this? Nothing must be repeated which he has not himself perceived, which he himself has not lived. Never to repeat in life anything or another has said in this with regard to meditation and with regard to any spiritual matters. Never to repeat what he has heard or been told. Right? And if you are going to do the same thing, that is, never repeat what you yourself have not perceived. Never assert or formulate what others have said about it. Then we can communicate together. That is, shared together this problem. That is, though you have heard or read, been told what meditation is, if you could put that aside completely, because you don't know a thing about it, do you? Except what others have said, what you have practiced according to the tradition or what others have said, and experience something according to the system which offers something. You're following all this, and therefore it is not yours. Therefore it is not original. It is second hand, and therefore utterly valueless. Right? You understand the question? That to find out what truth is, and we're going to understand it, come upon it, the mind must be totally free of all imitation, conformity. Mind must be entirely free from all fear. And then only it can perceive what is. So, to understand what meditation is, we must find out what it is not. Right? Are you with me, with the speaker? What it is not. And we are going to examine together what it is not. Because by negating that which is not, which is false, you'll find out for yourself what is true. But if you merely accept what others have said, it doesn't matter who it is, including the speaker, then you're merely conforming. And you're conforming because you hope through conformity, through obedience, through certain practices, which we shall go into presently, you will experience some fantastic thing. Have some vision, great powers, and so on. And so, if you are serious, and you can be serious following others, but that's not really serious at all. But if you are really serious, then we can share together our examination, our investigation, to come upon a state of mind a quality of mind that is utterly free, a mind that is non-mechanical, non-repetitive, a mind that's completely quiet, without any form of suppression, without any effort, without any practice. As we said, we will investigate together. When we use the word together, we mean, the speaker means it, together. You and I together. to find out what it is not, what is not meditation. First, there must be an understanding or learning about the self, the me. The me that is, with all its memories, anxieties, fears, ambitions, corruption, with its joys, sexual pleasures, fears, the me that separates itself from the you, and the you with your me that separates itself with another. Without understanding oneself, not according to anybody, not according to any philosophy, any teacher, any psychologist, but to understand oneself. And you cannot possibly understand yourself if there is any form of condemnation, any form of justification. To learn about yourself, there must be perception, to see yourself as you are, not as you would like to be, or try to change what you are. Are we communicating with each other? Please don't go off into meditation. Don't shut your eyes and go off into some fantastic spheres of imagination. Therefore, the denial, the negation of any authority that tells you what to do or how to investigate yourself, understand yourself, has no validity at all. Are you following all this? Please do it as we go along. That is, it is absolutely necessary that one understand oneself. Because without that understanding of yourself, there is no foundation. The understanding yourself is not the understanding of the self which is permanent. The so-called the soul, the Atman and the super self. The understanding of yourself means the understanding of your daily life. The way you talk, the motive, the ambition, the fears, the anxiety, the desire for power, position, the various conflicts. That is the you. You have to understand it. Because out of that understanding comes righteous action. And without that righteous, true foundation, meditation becomes a form of self-hypnosis. Right? So that is absolutely necessary. Not because the speaker says so, but you can see logically why it is necessary that you understand yourself. Because if there is any form of contradiction in yourself, any form of fear, any quality of ambition, competitiveness, envy, how can such a mind discover or come upon something that is not of itself? You see, reason, logic tells you that you must understand yourself first and not escape from yourself. Right? You must know yourself. And therein lies one of our difficulties, which is when one is learning about oneself, observing oneself, one's thoughts, not controlling them, not suppressing them, observing one's thought. The question arises from that: who is the observer? Right? Please understand, this is absolutely essential. If we are to go into this question of meditation, the question of how to live without sorrow, without conflict, how to live a life that is abundant, rich, that has meaning in itself, you have to understand this question, which is, who is the observer that is learning? You understand? I am watching myself. I am watching my speech, the way I talk, the gestures, my brutality, my violence, my kindliness, you follow? This whole battle of existence. I'm watching it. Now, is the watcher different from the thing he is watching? This you have to find out. Absolutely. For yourself. That is the watcher who says, I am learning about myself, is he different, an outsider, watching what is happening? You understand the question? Is the watcher different from the thing he watches? Or are they both the same? Right? You're following all this? Is not the watcher, the censor, the person who says, I am watching myself, is that entity different from the thing he watches? Or the observer is the observed? Right? You will find as you watch, the observer is the observed. The two are not separate. Therefore, there is no sense of contradiction. Therefore, there is no sense of suppression, control. Just both are one. Right? Again, this is reasonable, logical. You don't have to accept this from anybody. You can see this for yourself. There is no higher self watching the lower self. The higher self is a super fragment of the lower self. All the things that man has invented. But when you examine this whole process of this whole observation in which there is the learning, you will find the observer is the observed. The man who is angry is anger himself, anger itself. The entity that says there is a soul, there is an Atman, there is a super self, is part of the thought that divides. You're following all this? So, what is important is to learn about oneself without the censor. Right? The censor then is separate. Isn't it? When you have a censor who says, do this, don't do that, this right, this wrong, this should be, this should not be, then you are not watching. It's your previous conditioning, your tradition, your previous memory interferes with your observation, right? Do you see this simple fact? And you have to learn about yourself. Otherwise, you have no basis whatsoever of clear perception. Right? Then out of this arises the question of discipline. From what people have said, it is asserted that you must discipline yourself, control yourself, hold yourself. That's what we are trained from childhood, from all the books you read and so on, that you must control, discipline, shape yourself according to a pattern. Now, discipline means to learn. The word itself means to learn. Not to conform, not to obey, but to learn. And in the very act of learning is a discipline. If I am learning about myself without the observer, then that very observation brings its own order. After all, order is necessary, and that has been translated into discipline. You understand? So order is necessary. And this order cannot be brought about by any form of compulsion, following a pattern. Order can only come about when you have observed what is disorder, which is you live in disorder. Your life is in disorder. Your life is in contradiction, messy, confused. By learning about yourself, you bring about order, right? Now, therefore, you have found for yourself how to observe yourself. Observe without the observer being the entity that condemns, that judges, evaluates, that denies. He is the censor, which is the past. So, to observe without the past. Do you understand? That is, when you look at a rose, to look at it without the image that you have or the word that you have, which is, you call it the rose. Therefore, it prevents you from looking at the rose. You get this? To observe without the word. Right? Then, what is meditation? What is the quality of the mind that is in a state of meditation? We are going to share together. That doesn't mean we are going to meditate together, which is again sheer nonsense. First of all, you have to understand this question, which is, please just listen, will you? Just listen, because I'm going to talk about it. Perhaps you have never thought about all this. Just without judging, agreeing or disagreeing, without wishing to understand what is being said, just give your attention completely to what is said. If you give your attention completely to what is going to be said, that very state of attention is meditation. You understand? We'll go into it. Just listen. The speaker is not mesmerizing you. The speaker is not telling you what to do. The speaker is trying to point out a certain facts, not according his opinion, his judgment, facts. Facts which you and the speaker can discover. Not in some future date, now. By using your reason, not just your emotional nonsense. By using your reason, logic, clarity of thought. You know, it's one of the most difficult things to put into words, because you see, one has to understand the nature and the structure of thought. That's part of meditation. Understand it. Because if you don't understand it, what thought is, then you're constantly in conflict with thought. I really don't know where to begin this whole business. Because it's a very complex thing which we are going to look into together. You see, whether you understand or not what the speaker is going to say, just listen. The first step is the last step. The first step is the step of clear perception, right? And that act of clear perception is the last act. When you see danger, a serpent, that very perception is the complete action. You follow? Now, we said first step is the last step. The first step is to perceive. Perceive what you are thinking. Perceive your ambition. Perceive your anxiety, your loneliness, your despair, this extraordinary sense of sorrow. Perceive it without any condemnation, justification, wishing it to be different. Just to perceive it as it is. When you perceive it as it is, then there is a totally different kind of action taking place. And that action is the final action. Right? That is, when you perceive something as being false or as being true, that perception is the final action, which is the final step. Right? Now, listen to me. I perceive the falseness of following somebody else, somebody's instruction, somebody, it doesn't matter who it is, Krishna, Buddha, Christ, doesn't matter who it is. I see there is the perception of the truth that following somebody is utterly false. Right? Because your reason, your logic, and everything points out how absurd it is to follow somebody. Now, that perception is the final step. And when you have perceived, you leave it, forget it. Because next minute you have to perceive anew, which is again the final step. You're understanding this? No, I'm afraid you don't. Because if you don't drop what you have learned, what you have perceived, then there is a continuity of the movement of thought. And the movement and the continuity of thought is time. Right? And when the mind is caught in the movement of time, it is in bondage. So that is one of the major problems. Whether the mind can be free of the past regrets, the past pleasures, the past memories, remembrances, incidents and experiences, all these things that one has built up. The past, which is also the me. You understand? The me is the past. Now, which is thought gives continuity to something which has been perceived clearly, and and not being able to put it aside and give it to it a continuity, which becomes the means of perpetuating thought. Right? I'll show. Look. Oh. You have had a happy incident yesterday. You don't forget it. You don't drop it. You take it over with you. You think about it. The very thinking about something which is of the past gives continuity to the past. Therefore, there is no ending to the past. You're following all this? But if you see, if you perceive that you had a most extraordinarily happy incident yesterday, see it, perceive it, and completely end it. Don't carry it over. Right? Then there is no continuity as the past which thought has built. Therefore, every step is the last step. You get it? So, we have to go into this question whether thought, which is giving a continuity to memory, as memory, you understand? And memory is the past. Whether thought can ever come to an end. You're following all this? Because that's part of meditation. It's part of a total mutation of the brain cells themselves. Because if there is a continuity of the movement of thought, it is the repetition of the old. Right? Because thought is memory. Thought is the response of memory. Thought is experience. Thought is knowledge. You're following all this? How can one talk about all this seriously when I see people in front of me yawning? What kind of human beings are you? When you are talking about most serious things, because it touches your life, not the speaker's life, your life, your battles, your misfortunes, your ugliness, your sorrows. And when you are talking there about it, you sit there yawning. Wait. Don't, please, give little attention to this. I beg of you. Because it's your life. It's your sorrow. And to find out, investigate the ending of sorrow is part of this thing called meditation. Not the escape into some visions. So our question is, thought is always perpetuating itself through experience, through the constant repetition of certain memories. Knowledge is always in the past. And when you act according to knowledge, you are giving continuity to thought. But you must have knowledge to act technologically. See the difficulty. If you didn't use thought, you couldn't go home. You couldn't work in an office. You must have knowledge. But also see the importance, the danger of a mind that is caught in the perpetual movement of thought. And therefore, never seeing anything new. Because thought is always old. Thought is always conditioned, never free. Because it's acting according to the past. Right? So the question is, can this movement of thought, at one level it's absolutely necessary to function logically, sanely, healthily, and for a mind to perceive something totally new, to live totally differently. How can this movement of thought come to an end? You understand my question? So, the traditional approach to this question is control it. Right? Hold it. Or learn to concentrate. Right? Which again is absurd. Because who is the controller? You following all this? Is not the controller part of the thought? Right? Part of the knowledge which says you must control. That is, you have been taught to control. Right? So is there a way of observing thought? Please do follow this closely. Observing thought without any control, without giving it a continuity, but observe so that it ends. You understood my question? Because if thought continues, mind is never quiet. Right? And it's only when the mind is completely quiet, then there is a possibility of perception, seeing. See the logic of it, please, which is if my mind is chattering, comparing, judging, saying this right, this wrong, I am not listening to you. To listen to you, to understand what you're saying, I must give my attention. And to give one's attention completely, that attention itself is silent. Right? You followed all this? Just a minute, sir, just a minute. Sir, don't please. There is no questioning this evening. Because unless you have done all this, you're playing with words. our question is, one sees very clearly that silence is completely necessary. Not only at the superficial level, at the most deep level. You understand? At the very root of our being, there must be complete silence. How is this to happen? It cannot possibly happen if there is any form of control, right? Because then there is a conflict. You understand what I mean? Because then there is the man who says, I must control, and the thing to be controlled. In that there is a division. In that division there is conflict. You are following all this? Therefore, is it possible for the mind to be completely empty and quiet? Not continuously, but each second. That is the first perception that the mind must be completely quiet. The perception, the truth of it. And the seeing the truth of it is the first and last step, and then that perception must be ended, otherwise you carry it over. You're following all this? Therefore, the mind must observe, must be aware, choicelessly, of every perception and the ending of that perception instantly. Seeing and ending. You're following all this? Mama. I'm sorry, I know you're not, but it doesn't matter. So that the mind is not living with thought, which is the response of the past, and giving to that thought a continuity into the future, which may be the next minute, next second. Right? So, and thought, which is the response of memory, which is in the very structure of the brain cells themselves. If you have observed yourself, you will see that in the brain cells themselves is the material of memory. And that memory response, which is thought. To bring about a total mutation in the quality of the cell itself, there must be an ending of every perception, understanding, seeing, acting, and moving away from it. Right? So that the mind is always perceiving and dying. Perceiving the false or the truth and ending it and moving on without carrying the memory. Right? You know, all this demands tremendous perception, tremendous vitality, energy. Right? To go into this step by step, as we have been doing, not missing a thing, requires tremendous energy. let's find out how this energy comes into being. You understand my question? We need energy. For you to come here and sit here for a whole hour and listen demands energy. Unless, of course, you go to sleep, that's also a form of energy. To do anything requires energy. And this energy can be dissipated, used in all kinds of ways. So the question is, can this ordinary, everyday energy, going to the office, quarreling, nagging, fighting, sexual, you follow energy. Can this energy be heightened? Can this energy be completely held without any form of distortion? You understood my question? So, this energy is necessary, vital. And one must find out how to, what is the word? How to, no, please. Please, sir, please don't suggest to me. Oh, how eager you are, aren't you? You know nothing about it, but you know how to use words. You see, our energy is dissipated in conflict. Conflict between two nations, conflict between two beliefs, conflict between two opinions, conflict with politically, religiously, conflict between the husband and the wife and the children, conflict. Trying to see God and suppressing all your instincts. You follow? That's also conflict. That is distortion. How to have this complete energy without distortion? You follow me? Now let's find out. That is, by investigating what it is, what is distraction? What is dissipation of energy? We said conflict in every form is a distraction, is a dissipation of energy. Conflict. Conflict between the observer and the observed. Between the ideal and the fact. The what is and what should be. That's a conflict. Conforming to what has been and trying to carry out what has been in the present or in the future. That's part of conflict. You're following all this? So, that is a distortion of energy. Every form of conflict dissipates energy. Right? And the religious people throughout the world, the monks, the sannyasis, the yogis, the etc., 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 they all say you must control, you must be celibate, you must take a vow of poverty. You know all the game they play. What does that imply? Conflict, right? More and more and more conflict, suppression, conformity. And you think through conformity, through suppression, through every form of infantile battle with yourself or with another, politically, religiously or theoretically, will lead you to some kind of tremendous experience. Right? So, when you see the truth, please listen to this. When you see the truth, when you perceive the truth, that every form of conflict is a distortion, that very perception is the ending of conflict. Right? At that moment, then forget it, begin again. Don't say, well, I have seen it once and I'm going to hold on. You follow? That means you give continuity to thought, which is the memory of what you have perceived a few minutes ago. And so strengthen the brain cells themselves to carry on with this memory of the past. And therefore there is no radical change in the structure of memory, in the structure of the brain cells. You get it? Oh my. And there is this question of seeking experience. Right? They all say that you must experience something fantastic, transcendental. Now, first of all, why do you want to experience something beyond the ordinary? Right? You understood my question? Why do you want to experience something extraordinary? Because, for a very simple reason, you are tired of your daily experiences, right? You are bored. The daily experience of sex or no sex, the daily experiences of, anger and so on. You are bored with all that. And you say, by Jove, there must be some other kind of experience. Now, that very word, experience, means to go through. You understand? To go through, finish with it, not to carry it over. Right? And who is it that is seeking experience? The entity that says, I am tired of all these superficial things and I want something more. Right? That entity is part of the desire to have more. And that entity projects what he wants. You understood? You being a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian and God knows what else, you being conditioned, you want to experience Christ or Buddha or Krishna or whatever it is. And you will. Because what you are going to experience is projected from your past. Because you are conditioned as a Hindu. You're following all this? So your nirvana, your heaven, your experience, your future is according to your ugly little past. And a mind that seeks experience, that wants more, has not understood totally what is, which is the me that is craving for all this. You've understood? So, a mind that seeks experience is bound to tie. right, is bound to sorrow. For thought is time, for time is sorrow. Now, can the mind, next question, please follow this. Can the mind be totally awake without any question of challenge, experience? You understand my question? Because most of us need to be challenged. Otherwise we will go to sleep. Right? You understand this simple question? If you are not challenged every day, question, asking, criticism, you would naturally go off to sleep. So can the mind keep so totally awake that it needs no experience at all? You follow? And that can only happen when the mind has understood the whole structure and the nature of thought. There are so many things to talk about, all this. The next question is, I wonder, you know, the traditional people say, sit straight, breathe this way and that way, stand on your head for the next 20 minutes, and you will you know. What does it all mean? You can sit in the right posture with your back straight, breathing correctly, pranayama and all the rest of it, for the next 10,000 years. And you will be nowhere near perceiving what is true, because you are not understood at all. Yourself, the way you think, the way you live, you haven't ended your sorrow, and yet you want to find enlightenment. So one has to drop all that. You know, there are powers, siddhis as they are called. I don't know, I only know a few words of Sanskrit, I've forgotten most of it. And that seems to entice people. If you can levitate, if you can read thought, if you can do all kinds of twists and turns with your body, it seems to fascinate people. Because that way you get some power, prestige. Now you know, all this power are like candles in the sun. They're like candlelight when the brilliant sun is shining. Therefore they're utterly valueless if a man would understand what truth is. They have a therapeutic, physical value. Nothing else. Then out of all this, and there is much more we can't go into now, how does the mind, without following any system, without any compulsion, comparison, how can this mind, which has been so long conditioned, be completely empty of the past? You understand my question? To empty completely, so that it sees clearly and what it has seen clearly ended. So that it's always renewing itself in emptiness, which is renewing itself in innocence. Now the word innocence means an innocent mind means a mind that can never be hurt. The word innocence comes from a Latin word which means incapable of being hurt. And most of us are hurt. Hurt with all the memories which we have accumulated around those hurts. Our remorses, our longing, our loneliness, our fears are part of this sense of being hurt. From childhood we are hurt, consciously or unconsciously. How to empty all that hurt? Not taking time, you understand? Not saying, well, gradually I'll get rid of this hurt. When you do that, you will never end it. You're dead by the end of it. So the question is, you're following all this. Does all this interest you? Huh? Because all this is meditation and much more. Whether the mind can empty itself completely, not only at the superficial level but also at the very depths of its being, at its very roots. Because otherwise one lives in a prison. One lives in the prison of cause and effect. In this world of change. So you must ask this question. Put this question to yourself. Whether your mind can be empty of all its past and yet retain the technological knowledge. You understand? Your engineering knowledge, your scientific knowledge, your bureaucratic knowledge, the linguistic language, the memory of all that, and yet function from a mind that's completely empty. To empty that mind, the emptying of that mind comes about naturally, sweetly, without bidding, when you understand yourself, when you understand what you are, which is what you are is the memory, bundle of memories, experiences, thoughts. When you understand that, look at it, observe it. And when you observe it, see that in that observation there is no duality as the observer and the observed. Then when you see that, you will see that your mind can be completely empty, attentive, and in that attention you can act wholly, without any fragmentation. All this is part of meditation. Not just sitting in a corner 5 minutes a day and going off into some kind of idiotic conflict with yourself. Not twisting your head or your breathing those are all too infantile. They're exactly like candlelight in the sun. And when you understand totally the whole fragmentation of yourself, not integration, understand how this fragmentation arises, its contradictions, not how to bring it together. You can't. To bring it together implies a duality, the one who is bringing it, bringing about integration, all that. Then when you have really deeply, profoundly understood yourself, learnt yourself, about yourself, then you can understand the meaning of time. The time that binds, that holds, that brings sorrow. And if you have gone that far, and that means you have gone not far in the distance, far in verbally, not measurably far. If you have gone that, not height or depth, when you have gone to that understanding with that fullness, then you will find out for yourself a dimension which has no description, which has no word. Which is not something to be bought through sacrifice, which is not in any book, which no guru can ever experience, because he wants to teach you about it, how to reach it. Therefore, when he says, I have experienced that and I know what that is, he has not experienced it. He does not know what it is. The man who says he knows does not know. So a mind must be free of the word, the image, the past. And that is the first step and the last step.